So we'll let people trickle in here and get started in probably about 5 minutes or so. Appreciate all you guys for coming.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today. If people could please make their way to their seats, we're going to get started here. My name is Kim Horoy-Rogalski. I'm Chief of the Mobile Source Regulatory Development Branch at ARB. And today, I'm sure as you guys all know, we're working on developing amendments to our periodic smoke inspection program. And thanks for being here to share your ideas with us. With this, let me hand it off to Renee. Did you want to say something? Well, at least, yeah.
I'll just introduce myself. Renee Latawa, I'm manager of the Strategic Planning and Development section.
Alrighty, and I'm Jason Hill-Falkenthal, lead staff of the HD, VIP, and PSIP amendments that we're going to discuss today. I appreciate all you guys for coming out today and joining us. We'll get started here with the presentation moving forward. We'll go through the presentation and then we'll have people come up to the podium here for comments and questions right next to Paul here in the middle. And for those of you on the webcast, if you have, Paul, can you switch it over to the slides? Thanks. Yeah, so for those of you on the webcast, the email address listed here, hdvipworkshop@arb.ca.gov. If you have questions and comments throughout the presentation, you can email those in. And as we're taking questions and comments from the audience, we'll also be answering your questions over the email. Before we get started into the bulk of the presentation, I'll just give a quick outline of what we're going to talk about here. We're going to start off with a review of the current smoke inspection program requirements. Those two programs that we're talking about again are the Heavy Duty Vehicle Inspection Program, the HDVIP, and the Periodic Smoke Inspection Program, the PSIP. Following that, we're going to move into the proposed changes that we are looking to make to these two programs. Then we're going to move into the updates that we have for you guys on our comprehensive future heavy-duty inspection and maintenance program. And then we'll give you guys our contact information for all of us up here at the table if you have questions and comments following this workshop about our regulatory development in the future. So let's move into the schedule and the time frame of these two regulations. So the current ones we're going to be talking about today, the HDVIP and PSIP programs. We had our first workshop in August and September of 2016 in both El Monte and Sacramento. Today we have our second workshop here in Diamond Bar. We potentially have a third workshop sometime this spring. We haven't set a date for that, but if we do end up having a third, we will send out a listserv and give you guys updated information on when that might be. Our board date for this regulation is planned for September of this year with implementation in 2018. In terms of the longer term development of the comprehensive heavy-duty inspection and maintenance program, we're looking at a board date of 2020 with implementation in the post-2020 timeframe, potentially 2021-ish. So, now we're gonna jump into the current inspection programs, the HDVIP and PSIP. Now, the HDVIP is roadside inspections by ARB enforcement personnel for excessive smoke, tampering, and engine certification label compliance. The PSIP is its complementary program, which is annual self-testing for California fleets of 2 or more diesel vehicles. Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to jump in real quick. So these two programs, the Heavy Duty Vehicle Inspection Program and the Periodic Smoke Inspection Program, we're looking at proposing amendments to them. They've been in place since the early 90s, so these programs and requirements have been around for quite a while.
Thanks, Renee. So the current requirements for these two smoke inspection programs, the HDVIP and PSIP, is a 40% opacity limit for 1991 and newer diesel engines and a 55% opacity limit for 1990 and older diesel engines. These measurements are made using the SNAP acceleration opacity test using an SAE J1667 compliant smoke meter and the SAE J1667 testing protocol. In the PSIP program, the annual self-testing of the vehicles, those records are required to be kept for 2 years. Now we're going to move into the proposed changes to these two smoke inspection programs. First, we're going to discuss lowering the opacity limit for these two programs. Again, right now the current opacity levels are 40% and 55%. We're then going to move into proposed amendments to require reporting for the PSIP program. Following that, we'll get into a discussion of reducing the PSIP test frequency for well-maintained and compliant fleets. So for example, right now you're required to do annual testing on your vehicles for well-maintained fleets. And we will provide some potential flexibility of maybe requiring reduced frequency, maybe every other year or some other flexibilities like that. Following that, we'll move into proposed smoke tester certification requirements for the PSIP smoke program. So to start off our proposed amendments, we're going to start off with discussing the potential lowering of the current opacity limits. Now again, the current requirements are a 40% opacity for 1991 and newer model year engines. For DPF-equipped vehicles, we are proposing a 5% opacity limit. Now, vehicles with properly functioning DPFs have been shown to measure at 0 and very near 0 opacity levels. For non-DPF-equipped vehicles, we are proposing a 20% opacity limit down from the current 40% requirement. And this number was determined using extensive data showing engine out opacity of properly functioning engines, which we found to be well below this 20% number. And this isn't only for newer model year engines, it's also for older 2006 model year engines and older. We are also proposing some flexibility for vehicles that are subject to the truck and bus rule turnover requirements. Now, this rule requires 2009 model year and older engines, which are subject to turnover to 2010 model year and newer engines through the year 2023. We know that owners of these vehicles, which get cited for an opacity violation, will have to make a decision as to whether they repair their current vehicle or retire this vehicle a little earlier than expected and purchase this newer vehicle a little earlier than they planned. We are aware that this isn't just a simple, quick, straightforward decision and may actually require some additional time to analyze what is the best decision moving forward for your fleet. Currently, in the HDVIP program, owners have 45 days to make the repairs and pass the post-repair opacity smoke test. Here at ARB, we are proposing to double this length to 90 days to allow more adequate time for owners to fully analyze what is best for their fleets moving forward. We are open to other options as well and would look forward to hearing some of your suggestions following this presentation. So just to recap what we've discussed so far before we get into the proposed reporting requirements, we are proposing to lower the opacity limit for DPF-equipped fleets, vehicles down to 5% opacity, and for non-DPF-equipped vehicles down to 20% opacity. We're also proposing a time extension on the repairs for those vehicles that may be subject to truck and bus turnover requirements. So now we're going to move into...
So Jason, actually,
yeah.
before you go to the next part, maybe this would be a good opportunity. So of the folks that are here in the room, how many of you are part of fleets that currently participate in PSIP, like you currently do? Yeah? Okay. And how many of you think that you'd have trouble meeting the 5% and 20% opacity? Anyone? No? Okay. We'll have more time for broader comments later, but I wanted to jump in and ask about that at this point. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Kim. So now we're going to move into the proposed PSIP reporting requirements that we're looking to do for the PSIP program. So on slide 13 here, what exactly are we proposing as a change? So currently, owners are required to do annual smoke testing on their diesel vehicles and keep those records for up to 2 years. Upon audit by CARB, these owners must present these records to ensure that they're in compliance. What we're proposing here moving forward is that all owners subject to the PSIP regulation would be required to report this annual PSIP testing data to a database instead of just holding on to the records. We feel that this will encourage compliance and help level the playing field for fleets operating here in California. We are currently developing a database for submission of these results, but the next couple slides will give you an idea of the type of requirements that we're thinking of and what the database may look like. So here is a potential example of the reporting data that we may be asking for in the reporting requirement. Now, for each vehicle, we would be looking for electronic submission for all the data that's currently required under the record-keeping requirements in the PSIP program, Title 13 CCR Section 2194. And pretty much what this data is just for each of the vehicles in your fleet that you do your testing. It's the vehicle information, who did the test, what day, and the actual smoke opacity testing results. So all the data that you already just keep in the current PSIP program, we would just ask to be submitted to the database. Some additional items that we would be looking for would be the license plate number of the vehicle, the odometer mileage upon when that vehicle is being tested, the engine family, and an actual photo of the smoke opacity test strip each year that you do the test. Now, for most of the data here, it's really just a one-time entry when you do your initial reporting. For example, most of it is information about the vehicle itself and the license plate. The only things that you would be reporting on a subsequent year basis would be, for example, the odometer mileage and the actual opacity test results. So slide 15 here is an example of what the database may look like. We'll kind of go over it just to give you guys an idea of what you may potentially report into. So you can see here the three different slots. You have the owner information on the left, the vehicle information in the center, and the annual opacity smoke testing information here on the right. Now the owner information and the vehicle information, again, this is really just a one-time input that you would put in the initial year, and then each year you would come back, be able to pull up this information and insert your opacity test results. For example, here on the bottom right-hand side, you see upload test strip, which has a browse function. And we're predicting right now that we would be accepting files from like a PDF file, a JPG file, or a PNG file to be submitted as the test strip itself. Now, we mentioned earlier in this presentation that implementation of the opacity, the HDVIP and PSIP amendments would be in 2018. We are proposing currently right now that reporting requirements would start in April 2019 for larger fleets, those fleets of 4 or more vehicles. And then for smaller fleets of 2 to 3 vehicles, we would be beginning reporting in the April 2020 timeframe. So we're giving a little bit longer lead time for the reporting requirements. As we mentioned earlier as well, is there a problem?
Sorry for all the mumbling up here. So we've just been notified that the webcast is not working, so people viewing on the web are panicking and emailing us. So I'm thinking maybe we'll give them a couple minutes to try to get that back up. And in the meantime, because I think everyone's going to want to at least see ARB's presentation. In the meantime, are there any audience members that had any comments or questions that we might cover in this?
Kim,
time?
if I could, for a moment. It's an internal issue. We're working on rebooting it. They're working as fast as they can. We apologize, okay?
Oh, no worries.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Paul, do you know how long it's been down?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, but I mean, have they missed the majority of the presentation? Do you know? Okay.
Okay, all right. So can you guys come up to the microphone so we can, so the whole audience can hear you?
Oh, come on up.
Come on. You're not on TV yet, so it's all good.
And if folks who speak could give their name and affiliation, that would be super helpful for us.
My name is Rich Miller with the County of Riverside. And on the reporting here, when you're going electronically with this, we have excess of 80 vehicles we do every year, the opacity tests on.
Mm-hmm.
You're adding another burden to my employees to be able to get that done.
Mm-hmm.
How soon will you be going to the extended on well-maintained vehicles, and what will be the criteria of that?
Yeah, so Kim, that is a slide coming up. I guess we can just talk about it. So, yeah, so slide, actually, yeah, 17, so the one we actually have up here right now is getting to that, where we're looking for well-maintained fleets who report, for example, for the first couple of years and are reporting on time and are, passing all the requirements. We would extend these flexibilities to you, for example, to every other year. Some additional flexibilities we're looking at for newer vehicles in lieu of the opacity test strip submission, we would be open to OBD data for those vehicles instead of actually having to do the smoke opacity test. And we are also open to other options that some of you may want to propose, and we could discuss what would work best for you guys as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Todd, California Diesel Compliance. On the reporting, can they hire us to report that for them? Are we going to be able to upload their data and put it in there?
So you go in and do the smoke opacity tests for
Yeah, we
fleets?
currently do about 15,000 trucks
Okay.
a year for
That
all
is
through
something I
California.
think as we get farther into it, if that's something that, as we talk to you guys, if that's happening a lot, I think that's something that we can set up. Our database guy isn't here, but I think that that would be doable.
Yeah, I think that works fine. Our database it's probably transparent to us whether it's somebody else uploading the truck information, the vehicle information, and the VIN number stuff. So as long as the fleet is okay with you doing that, I think that would be fine.
I think we would put it as the fleet's responsibility to get it in there, but how they do that is an option to them.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm Rick Thompson with the Merit Fleet Solutions. Currently, there's two categories, a 40% opacity requirement and the 55. With the new lower opacity limits of 5% and 20% for non-DPF, do the categories of years make any difference? Or are they all going to fall into that?
They're all fall into those two categories. We're planning to go away with the 1990.
So it's going to be a
number.
5%, 20% across the board?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, just so you know, the 55% opacity was for pre-1991 vehicles, so I'm not sure how many of those are still on the road. There's some. So can I get a show of hands, how many people do their own opacity testing? Okay, about half. And how many people hire somebody else to do their opacity testing? Okay, thanks.
Oh, we have another person coming. Perfect. Good timing.
David Christie with the Merit Fleet Solutions. Just quick question: does the online reporting replace, the files that we have to keep on site because you are uploading the tests and everything? So
That's a good question. We are internally discussing whether we need the records to be held onto or not. In terms of, we'd have to talk to our enforcement teams to see if that's something that would be required. I think it may be in your guys' best interest to have some data just in case, you get audited. But at this point, I'll go ahead and.
Yeah, so you'll be entering the data in the database, and that's probably fine. My guess is our enforcement guys are probably going to say, keep your little test strips, so we make sure that somebody's not downloading pictures of test strips off the internet.
got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi there, Andrew Salem with Valley Power Systems. In certain rare instances, when we're doing repairs and vehicles having a problem reaching attainment from the opacity test, we've had problems, again, on rare instances, getting it into attainment. We reached out to the factory, and they have been less than cooperative. Will there be anything in the rule or any way for us to reach out to CARB to maybe nudge them to assist us in getting the truck into compliance?
So when you mean meeting attainment, as in like with.
Let's say it's a 1991 or newer, and it's above 20%. So his opacity was, let's say 25%. And we've done whatever we can to repair the engine. Everything we've tested has tested either fine or we've repaired whatever wasn't fine. And we reached out to the factory for assistance, and they basically said, it's under 40%, we're not worried about it.
So I think we would want to talk to you and find out how often is that happening, and what are the problems. We have a couple of different mechanisms.
Okay.
There's potentially, we could build in potential for relief into the regulation. We also have potential for enforcement discretion, but that would be on a case-by-case basis. So in going forward and figuring out what to do about that. We'd need to understand, like, how often is the problem happening, and maybe
Right.
what you've
And
done.
they're rare instances.
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, for sure.
I think because they are so rare, we would deal with that on a case by case. Because
Okay.
like if there, for some reason, you've done everything you
Right.
can, I mean, our teams.
Your parts are
yeah,
fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, I appreciate it.
But can I ask a follow-up? So you're saying in some instances you're repairing their trucks and you currently can't get under 40%?
No, in the particular customer that I'm thinking of, we were having a hard time getting him into compliance to retrofit him with the DPF. We couldn't get him below the 20% that the manufacturer of the DPF required.
Oh,
So
okay.
he was in that gray area where it's below the 40%, but above the 20% by the manufacturer of the DPF.
So it was that you were unable to put a DPF on?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So maybe while we have a little time, Sharon, would you like to talk about what your group does with, I know you do a lot of assisting fleets with retrofit issues, and maybe this is a chance to, since we're waiting on the webcast anyway.
Quick question. Armando Huerta with the City of El Monte. We are in the transportation division, and I know that the new law is going to affect somewhat the bus industry. I know most of this is for trailer trucks. Can you clarify, the last workshop I went to, there was some discussion, but very little. How is this new law going to affect us in that sense?
So this law would be pretty much straightforward. If, for example, if your diesel vehicle has a DPF on it, it would need to meet 5%. If it does not, if it is a diesel engine and does not have a DPF, it need to meet 20%. But for example, if your vehicle is a natural gas or electric, if it's for some of the other rules, technically those vehicles will not fall under these regs. This is just for the diesel.
So, and just to clarify, transit buses are currently subject to this fleet self-inspection requirements and the heavy-duty vehicle inspection requirements. It covers all on-road heavy-duty diesel vehicles over 14,000 pounds. Well, actually, even over 6,000 pounds. But, so they've been subject, and it would just be, now they would be subject to the lower opacity limits.
If it's diesel only.
If it's diesel.
The PSIP program applies to diesel vehicles.
Right.
The HDVIP applies to gas and
Gasoline and diesel,
But with
yeah.
gasoline, they do a visual inspection. They don't actually do the opacity test.
The HDVIP program basically gives the inspectors, if they see a smoking vehicle on the road, they can potentially write you a ticket if you have high opacity limit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Kim, for letting me speak. I'm Sharon Lemieux, and I'm the branch chief of the in-use programs, and I also have the retrofit advocate and the retrofit program, as well as the warranty. And so we have been dealing with a lot of repair issues over the years as retrofits have been phased in, and we see similar issues with the technology for OEM trucks, because now they have filters. So a lot of the trucks now need additional maintenance above and beyond what some fleets are used to. So I'm really glad to see the opacities being lowered. I think we've been using that as a rough surrogate to judge engine and filter health. And I think when we speak with a lot of the repair shops, they are in agreement with the levels that are being proposed here. So we kind of see it as a good step in the right direction, lowering the opacity to be consistent with the technology. And I just wanted to mention that if there are any fleets that feel that there'd be a challenge with meeting these requirements, we do have the retrofit advocate. She can, that's Kathleen Mead, and she can work with the fleets to see what's the issue going on. I was familiar with the gentleman from Valley Power who talked about the fact that some repairs, the owners try to do as much repairs as they can. They can't lower their opacity. What we found sometimes is it's a cost problem where they can lower the opacity, but it requires more repairs than they're willing to do. And so that is the issue. So I know we're looking at ways to kind of address those concerns, minimize the impact to fleets, and we just want to make sure that that we do have these filter-equipped trucks because of diesel is a carcinogen, and we want to make sure that there's a level playing field, so everyone is making sure their trucks are maintained to a certain level. So I just wanted to mention that, and thanks a lot again.
Thank you, Sharon. How are we doing on webcast? Is it still down?
She's saying that some people are looking and can see it on our YouTube channel, so I would say let's move forward.
Okay,
It's time to move forward.
thanks.
Okay. Okay, so for those of you who were able to come back on the webcast, we're sorry for the technical issues. We will, I guess I can back up a little bit. Let me back up a little bit just in case those of you on the webcast missed some of the presentation here. We'll go ahead and start on slide 16 again, the proposed reporting date requirements. So implementation of the actual HDVIP and PSIP amendments are planned for 2018. The reporting requirements are planned for larger fleets, fleets of 4 or more vehicles starting April 2019, and then for smaller fleets, 2 and 3 vehicle fleets beginning in April 2020. As we mentioned earlier, we are considering alternatives for the PSIP program, providing some flexibility, for example, for well-maintained fleets who consistently report on time and are in compliance. We're proposing potentially to reduce the frequency of their PSIP testing, going from the annual requirements to, for example, every other year. We are also proposing the potential of submission of OBD data for 2013 and newer model year engines in lieu of the actual opacity testing. And we are open to other options that we would like to discuss with you guys and see which options may work best for you guys moving forward. So just a recap of what we've proposed so far since we had a little break. We are proposing to lower the opacity limit for DPF-equipped vehicles down to 5%, the opacity limit for non-DPF-equipped vehicles down to 20%. We're proposing to extend the time limit for making repairs if you get a citation in these programs up to 90 days for vehicles that are potentially subject to truck and bus rule turnover requirements. And we're also proposing to require electronic reporting of the PSIP testing instead of the current option of just maintaining the records. So now we're going to move into the potential proposed smoke tester requirements that we introduced in the first workshop. Now, staff is proposing to require training certification for contracted smoke testers who provide their services for a fee. Fleets who do their own in-house PSIP testing, we are currently not planning to require them to receive a training certification. To become certified, we are proposing that a smoke tester complete the CDET, the California Council on Diesel Education and Technology, HDVIP and PSIP training course. This is a one-day in-person hands-on training to learn and be certified in the proper use of the smoke meters and the proper way of doing the SAE J1667 testing procedure. These CDET courses are offered at multiple community colleges throughout the state, both in Northern and Southern California. Currently, there are 6 community colleges that are offering these classes. It's American River College, Delta College, and Alameda College in Northern California. And then in Southern California, it's Los Angeles Trade Tech, Palomar, and Santa Ana Community College. These classes are offered on about a monthly, once a monthly basis, and they actually, on their website at ccdt.org, they actually list out all the class options for the whole entire year moving forward. So it allows any smoke tester to some flexibility to take which class works best for them. Now ARB is also committed to providing additional training materials online to assist anyone who is looking for information not only on these potential future regulatory requirements, but also information on the proper way to perform the SAEJ 1667 testing procedure. So although we are not requiring training for in-house PSIP testers, we do recommend that you guys at least take advantage of the training materials that we are going to post to get yourself familiar with the new requirements moving forward. So that completes our presentation on the proposed changes to the HD VIP and PSIP programs. We're now going to move into the second portion of this presentation. We're going to give an update on the potential future comprehensive heavy-duty inspection and maintenance program. Now, it's important to note that these HD VIP and PSIP amendments are the first step towards this comprehensive heavy-duty inspection and maintenance program. We are considering for the comprehensive program a focus on OBD, onboard diagnostics, for 2013 model year and newer engines, and we are considering remote OBD and telematics as a possible compliance pathway. We are looking to require also heavy-duty repair shop licensing and mechanic competency, similar to what's done on the light-duty side, well beyond anything that we are proposing currently for the PSIP smoke tester requirements. Additionally, we are looking into the best possible methods of dealing with non-OBD vehicles, and we're looking at the best ways to ensure program verification and how to ensure we're meeting the benefits we're predicting when this program is actually in use. Now, we are in the early developmental stages of this comprehensive heavy-duty I&M program. We do have multiple research efforts on the way right now, which are looking at the best ways to develop and implement this program. One example we have here is a contracted research study that we have with the University of California, Riverside, with CSERT, their Center for Environmental Research and Technology. We have commissioned them with a 2-year project to evaluate the best potential test methods that are out there for identifying vehicles with broken and mal-maintenance emission controls. So for example, they're looking at all the different technologies that are out there right now, which include but aren't limited to OBD diagnostics, dyno testing, remote sensing, just to name a few. Additionally, they're being tasked with doing a pilot demonstration program where they're going to measure both pre and post repair emissions and look at what this program's cost and emission benefits might be to come up with a potential cost effectiveness for such a program moving forward. Currently, they are in the evaluation process where they're looking at the different test methods moving forward, and as the year continues, they're looking to get into the second 2 parts that you see below. Additionally, we have a couple internal studies that we're moving forward with. One of these, we've mentioned both of these actually at the first workshop as well. One of these is the repair durability study, where we're measuring both emissions of both pre and post repair. And the difference that sets this one apart is we're planning to recapture these vehicles between 6 months to a year later and retest them to determine how the durability of the repairs are that were made and whether these repairs are having an effect in the real world. One thing that we want to note to all you guys out there is that this study, we are looking for volunteers, and ARB is actually willing to pay for the repair costs for these vehicles. So if you do have a vehicle in need of repair and are looking to save a little money, we'd be more than happy to take that off your hands for a little bit and insert it into this program. Additionally, we have the second program here listed, the OBD Check Pilot program. This is a 2-pronged approach program. We are collecting OBD data from in-use vehicles on the road, and then a second portion where we are actually working with fleets who are voluntarily participating with us to help learn the best ways to download OBD data and the best collection methods, which works for fleet to limit any potential burden. We do currently right now have, I believe, 3 fleets that we're working with. We are looking for more fleets out there as well if you're interested. So please come talk to us afterwards or email us. And actually on the next page, we'll have some contact information to reach out to if you're interested in participating in either of these 2 programs. So here is the Ron Haste, manager down in our El Monte branch, is actually the contact for both of these 2 programs, the Repair Durability Project and the OBD Check Pilot Program. Again, I just want to mention that we are willing to pay for the vehicle repairs for the Repair Durability Study. On the next slide, we have the contact information for us up here. Myself, Jason Hill Falkenthal, who's the lead staff of the HDVIP and PSIP amendments. Christopher Gosso over to our left. Wave your hand, Krista. She's the lead staff of the Heavy Duty Inspection and Maintenance Program Development, the second project that we were discussing here. And Renee here, just to my left, is the manager of our section, and then Kim to her left is our branch boss. So if you guys have any questions or comments after this workshop that you'd like to reach out to us or participate in any of these programs, please feel free to email us, call us at any time, and we'd love to set up a call with you guys or respond via email. Additionally, this final slide before we open it up to some dialogue, we have our webpage for both the HD, VIP, and PSIP amendments, and then the heavy-duty I&M program is listed here, the first hyperlink in green. And then for those of you who have not joined our listserv yet, please go to the listserv located and go to heavy-duty vehicle inspection and maintenance, and you'll get up-to-date information on potentially when our next workshop may be, any presentations that are being released, and any development we have on these regulatory amendments. So again, I just want to thank all of you for coming out today and joining us for this workshop, and I look forward to hearing any comments that you guys may have, not only here in person, but hopefully on the webcast as well. So thank you very much. And that. So I think we'll open it up. Perfect. So we'll open it up. Does anyone in the audience here currently have additional comments or questions that we haven't addressed yet? Can you come up to the front, sir, please? Thank you.
Just a quick question on your amendment to the rules. What's going to classify a well-maintained vehicle? Who's going to determine whether it's well-maintained? Are we going to have to submit repair data and whatnot for maintaining them?
Yeah, so at least it's still a little bit of a work in progress of how we define that per se, but in my vision, if you're consistently meeting the requirements of the regulation and you're reporting on time, that would be considered you're in compliance with the rules. And we would look at, after a few years, if you've done everything diligently, we could open up some of the flexibility.
So it's not going to have anything to do with like preventative maintenance, being well maintained, oil changes, oil samplings, and things like that?
We could, that's something that we can also look into. If you have ideas of the best ways for us to monitor that and ensure how to define the well-maintained fleet, I think we'd be open to listening. Do you have anything, Renee?
Yeah, we'll take recommendations. We'd be happy to listen to.
You also mentioned something about like telematics. I mean, my fleet, I run my I run my maintenance program through telematics, where it emails me when oil changes and tire rotations and things like that are due. So maybe you could somehow link to that, to where you could just submit because it prints out a repair order for me every time we do an oil change and oil sampling and things like that.
So are all your vehicles in your fleet OBD equipped, or are they all 2013 and newer, or do you have some older vehicles?
Out of the 50, I have about 11 that are not DPF, that are low carb use or not DPF'd yet. but most of them are 2006 and newer, 2013s with OE equipment on them.
Yeah, I think we'd have to talk to you more and get our actual database guys in here to see what type of stuff we'd be able to submit like that. But I think, especially like you're saying, logistics data that has all the vehicles, that is something I think that we can look into as a flexibility to providing in lieu of annual testing.
Okay.
And we can have discussions more on the frequency we'd need, information like that
All
moving
right,
forward.
thank you.
Yeah. Krista, you said you got some emails? Oh. Okay, so here's a question from Chuck White from Waste and Recycling Industry Government Affairs. With respect to very large fleets with multiple locations in California that frequently change the location of individual trucks, will the new rules allow such fleets to continue using the initial reporting information even though the location of the vehicle may change from time to time? Yes, I think once the vehicle is put into the database, you just go into your fleet account, whatever your login is, and then pick that individual vehicle and put in its new annual report. We wouldn't require you to update every year where that vehicle is or anything like that.
Okay, and then we got a comment from Christina Ross with Fleet Crew. And she says it would be nice if the certification courses provided by the colleges would host classes in Spanish. All of our technicians have taken the course. However, 2 of our employees, specifically Spanish as first language, have a difficult time passing/understanding the material. I have emailed every school and none cater to Spanish-speaking individuals. Yeah, that's something I think we might be able to help with. We'll look into what we can do there. We do have a lot of Spanish-speaking folks who help us with assisting truckers. So we'll see what we can do in terms of assisting on that.
We have a comment here from Ron Nuss from Northwest Excavating Incorporation. Reporting each vehicle would add a lot more clerical work for those of us who are not staffed to do so. We're already overburdened with the on and off-road and other ARB and AQMD regulations. So we are aware of some of the bigger fleets out there, and one thing that we've been working with our database specialists to do is to allow big fleets to import like a spreadsheet or a file instead of individually going in with each single vehicle. We're still in the early development of that, but I think that is something that we will be able to do to remove some of the burden for the larger fleets.
Okay, and then we had another comment also from Ron Ness, that submitting OBD data in lieu of opacity testing is not reasonable. The repair shops can't find component mechanics to work on these complicated trucks as it is, let alone find more people to perform OBD testing. How could we get our fleet to these guys while keeping our crews and trucks working? That's why we purchased an opacity tester, so we could do it in-house and still keep our trucks rolling. They aren't pickups, they're large trucks with trailers and large bodies. Okay, so the idea of submitting OBD data in lieu of opacity was something that was proposed to us by one of our contractors who's been working with fleets, and they're interested in doing that. They're already tracking OBD data themselves and for their own repair and maintenance purposes. So that would not be a requirement. That would be something that we're exploring as an option, and we have had fleets express some interest in that. So it's certainly not something that we would be requiring as part of the PSIP amendments, but if there are fleets that are interested in it, we'd like to hear from you, because we have heard that there are fleets that would be wanting to do that.
Yeah, and like Renee mentioned, that would be a flexibility option if you, in lieu of doing the testing, you have the option of still doing the opacity testing instead of OBD data, even for the newer vehicles. We have another comment from Ron. testing the vehicles every other year would be great. That lines up with the state's current small truck smog checks. I never understood why fleets have to test every year, but trucks under 14,000 pounds are every other year by the state smog check stations. Yeah, thank you for that comment, Ron.
So, and my one comment on that would be that trucks are accumulating, many of the heavy-duty trucks are accumulating significantly more mileage every year than light-duty vehicles. So, you know, when we're thinking about the frequency of testing, we also have to think about the mileage accumulation and the increased emissions that are associated with heavy-duty trucks compared to light-duty vehicles.
Mm-hmm. And we have another comment from Ron. Extending the repair time would help. These shops are always busy and they're always running behind. And yes, I'm talking about the truck dealers, not just independent shops. And appreciate that comment, Ron. And again, that extension that we're proposing right now, we're proposing just for the 2009 model year and older engines that would be subject to potential truck and bus turnover requirements. So at this point, we are not proposing extending that for the newer vehicles. Have these all? Have you answered all these? Okay.
Okay, so while they're looking at that, for those of you that are here, I'm curious, one thing we tried to do specifically for this workshop was try to reach some of the smaller fleets. And we know that truck operators are busy operating their trucks, so they don't always like to spend their time at ARB workshops. But I'm curious to know, did we end up, is there anyone in the audience that's from a one vehicle fleet, that's like an owner operator? No. Okay, any fleets of 2 to 3 vehicles? Yeah, that's the large fleets. Okay. How about 4 to 10? Okay, a handful. 10 to 50? Okay. And then more than 50? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Are there any other comments or questions from the audience here in person, Chris?
So Chris Shimoda with the California Trucking Association, and we've done a little bit of the analysis on the effects in later years with diesel particulate filter equipped trucks and emissions deterioration. And I think one of the concerns with doing wholesale changes to the PSIP program for the purposes of getting at PM 2.5 specifically is that the deterioration effects are actually fairly minor in terms of the additional emissions that can be had there. In later years, brake and tire wear account for about 80% of the PM 2.5 in the model. Tailpipe emissions just become a much smaller factor. And so given that I think you've gotten some feedback that doing submissions of PSIP slips on an annual basis would be administratively burdensome, I'm wondering as far as, are there any concerns that there's just not that much emissions period to be cleaned up if we move down the path of doing this program separate from, admittedly on the NOx side, there is quite a bit of emission benefit of doing inspection and maintenance, hence the other part of the work that you're doing. Is there any concern about sort of the bang for your buck, PM 2.5 versus NOx on inspection and maintenance? Because we obviously don't want to do two wholesale changes in inspection and maintenance programs if we can just do one very cost-effective one for the purpose of ozone attainment.
Sure. So I think to get to your point, the HD VIP and PSIP amendments right now are the first step towards that overall comprehensive program. And when we develop this comprehensive program, whether some of this program stays in for the older vehicles or goes away is still to be determined. I think in terms of if we go for the newer vehicles with an actual OBD compliance I&M program, they wouldn't be subject to the continued PSIP. It would be a kind of a transition.
Right.
But whether this holds for some of the older vehicles which don't have SCR or don't have OBD remains to be a question based on some of the studies that we are working on right now.
Okay. And then just two other quick observations is I know one of the big, heartburn issues on PSIP and while we're transitioning out of this program that would go a long way is obviously a lot of the fines for PSIP are, especially with a 40% cut point, paperwork errors. So you had someone leave the shop, it's very easy to let something slip with all the other regulatory requirements, not just from ARB and South Coast, but we have FMCSA and CHP and a whole bunch of other folks to worry about. So even in cases where the fleet was well maintained, if you did not keep the records for the vehicles subject to PSIP, that's an immediate $500 per vehicle fine. And I know one of the things that's been discussed is if there could be any sort of flexibility where the fleet can demonstrate it's been maintaining its fleet, can demonstrate that it passes either 40% or lower cut point for opacity, can there be additional flexibility as far as wiping out the administrative side of things if there was no excess emissions? So just a comment. Don't need any feedback on that. I know we've had lots of discussions with staff about that.
Yeah, that is something we could be considering with some of the flexibilities. I don't think we've come to a point where we've nailed down exactly what that would be.
Right.
I think in terms of what we're, one thing with this database is we plan to send out reminder emails to them to remind, hey, your smoke opacity tests are due, because we've heard a lot of people comment that I just forget about it.
Right.
I mean, like you said, it gets lost in all the other compliance
Right.
stuff. So I think
and
one
trying
way,
to make the business stay in
Exactly.
business and
yeah. So
all
I
those
think,
sort of things. Yeah.
as we get their information into the system, they input their vehicles that first time.
Right.
Constant reminder saying, hey, don't forget this. you
Right.
know. So I think that can also help in that situation as well.
And then just a bit of feedback from one of our members who's taken a look at this is, given you guys have said, you could potentially accept a spreadsheet or, something like that from the larger fleets who have a lot of vehicles to upload. Do you think you guys could go as far as just a verification that the testing has been done, something that would allow enforcement to then come back and say, well, we want to see that you did it.
What do you mean by verification?
So I think
Them affirming that their trucks all pass.
Okay,
right.
I mean,
we've done the testing and it's verified, and you guys can come back then and audit based on that statement.
My guess would be probably not.
Okay. Well, so at least we have our answer on that one. But and thank you very much for reaching out ahead of time. I'm sure we're going to have lots of interchanges as this thing moves forward. And I guess I apologize for coming in late. Have you guys set a potential board date for this item yet?
September of this year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment that we're receiving lots of comments by email. However, I'm having trouble accessing them. So if you've sent a comment and we don't respond, we will eventually respond.
Jason, again, we apologize. We're having a district-wide email problem, so it's affecting her, the webcast and everything. I've been told if people try to log in to the YouTube channel, they can see this, but not through the district. And we apologize. Public internet, it happens in the afternoon a lot. We apologize. They're working on it feverishly, but it's out of our hands right now. So that's why we wanted to record this, just for posterity, and we're doing all we can.
Okay. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, Chris. Yeah, we will respond when we get the emails. If we don't get them till tomorrow, when we get back to our office, we'll respond in time to those online emails.
There's been a couple comments on the PSIP reporting that a possible email might go to somebody saying that you're late. Who's going to determine, and when do they determine a stop and start on their fleet?
Go ahead. Sorry,
yeah,
finish.
we do several customers, and sometimes it's 80 locations throughout the state, and they will move around. So the current rule is any time in the calendar year, preferably within 3 months. So are you guys going to hammer it down to if a truck's July 1, it has to be by July 1 of the next year, or how are you guys looking at that?
So we were requested by some folks, hey, can you do like DMV does and sends us a reminder that, hey, your registration is up and it's time to do your testing. My guess is, and this is, programming the database, what it would be is when you're coming within a few months of, it's been a year since this particular truck was tested, we would ping you with an email saying, hey, these trucks are coming up for their testing due date.
So you're aiming at a due date?
So what it would be, so we have, the fleets would enter their contact information, so we'd have an email address on file. We would have from the database, for example, the last time they submitted a opacity report from that vehicle.
Right.
Let's say it's been 300 days since they submitted their last one. Email comes out, hey, this vehicle has a due date. The last time it was submitted was X amount of days. You have this amount of days before it has been
So
a
are
year.
you thinking that maybe proposing fines on late testing is a alternative source of income for the
So currently, right,
state? Anybody pay a fine yet? No.
there are, that one thing that actually Chris Shimoda, I think he left, was saying that some fleets are currently getting fines for not doing the PSIP program right now. That is in the regulation already. So this is a way for us to hopefully get the word out to fleets to remind them to stay on
But
their
that's only
vehicles.
going to be the fleets that are in your database.
We don't have, there's no database yet. This is a proposed
okay.
database.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, good. Thank you.
Well, yeah, for this program.
Okay, so we had a question from Christina Ross with Fleet Crew. Why are we excluding independent owner operators, one owner fleets from this program? They should be included, and that is in the legislative authority for the PSIP program is restricted to fleets of 2 or more. So it would take a change in the legislative authority through the California legislature in order to enable us to include single vehicle fleets in the PSIP program. Is there still going to be a 4-year and older exception, or will all vehicles, regardless of engine age, be included in this program? Okay, so let me clarify on that one. Currently, for light duty smog check, vehicles that are 6 years or newer are excluded from the light duty biennial smog check requirement. There is no exclusion.
4 years in PSIP.
Is it 4 years? Oh, all right, sorry. Okay, Jason tells me it's 4 years for PSIP, so that would stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Bob Shepard with Quinn. Kind of to follow up on a couple of the comments, I know that Ron Nuss had mentioned it, I know Chris had talked about it. You're asking fleets, our fleet is over 300 vehicles. You're asking a fleet to annually turn in every single one of their smoke tests. That is the burden that Ron was talking about. Uploading a fleet, there's no problem. But the problem is ongoing. We have a constant add and delete of vehicles. You're something now that is a magnitude above even what truckers is, because truckers only requires you to show the exceptions. It doesn't require you to report your entire fleet. There are fleet reporting errors, VIN numbers, things like that. And now all of a sudden you've opened up a whole arena to a lot of errors, enforcement items. We're only 300 vehicles. I got to imagine the people with 1,000 vehicles or more than 1,000 vehicles in their fleet have got to be cringing with what you're asking them to do on an annual basis. The calendar year thing that was discussed in 2 speakers before, that was legislated in to allow the people to accommodate the smoke test within a calendar year as opposed to constantly fighting the 365 days. I just heard you say something like a due date. I don't think you can do that without legislation. The legislation was there, it put it into place. I believe you need to go back and take a look at that as to what you are allowed to do. the affirmation that Chris talked about. We do that indoors. We do that in the ROAR form. We're saying everything that we've done, to the best of our knowledge, has been completed. We got audited several years ago on our smoke test. Came out clean. In fact, we were told we were one of the cleanest fleets they had ever seen. But I had to give 300 and some odd scans to that inspector. It was a pain. And for us to now go, we don't do them all at the same time either. And so we're now constantly putting them in. We miss one, and that's an enforcement item. I guess I ask, what is it that CARB is really looking for? I think the term scofflaws has been used, but is that what CARB is looking for? Because there's probably a majority of the fleets out there that are compliant. And to ask them to go and do all this extra work, I'm not sure if it's really something that you should be asking of the industry. Okay?
Okay, we appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
And yeah, we definitely do, and we're definitely listening. And the rationale behind suggesting the reporting was to try to set up a system where there's a level playing field. So some people are spending a lot of resources doing smoke testing and keeping their records impeccably. We'd like to make more certain that everyone is doing that so that it's fair. That's what we were thinking. But we're definitely listening.
We have a question here. If the vehicle is registered in another state but comes into California, will they need to participate, log opacity data? For those fleets that are not California-based, they are not in the PSIP program. They would be. Every vehicle is in the HD VIP program, but only California-based fleets are in the PSIP. Go ahead, sir.
You know, a majority of the smoke test equipment is already got all the electronic data in it. We've been electronic for years now, which, I mean, we fulfill, 3,000 truck fleets in a matter of just pushing a couple buttons. The data is in your smoke test equipment already to go fully electronic. They're not at the hardship, I think, that you're asking is a copy of the printed data. And that's just an extra step that is completely unneeded. In my opinion, that was an enforcement step because the data on that ticket usually evaporated or disappeared within 6 or 7 months anyway. But all the equipment that we use an old wager, and we do, I don't want to drop any people's names, but we do some very, very large fleets, and everything that you've already got, if you're doing your own smoke testing, is in the box. Just get a little IT guy in there. They can go boom, boom, boom. It's all electronic. It comes out in a ticket, and it can be sent in a matter of nanominutes. It should not be. It's really not that hard, except for if you guys are maybe eliminate the 1990s version of the receipt.
So for that electronic version, though, you would be able to just submit that whole package
Oh
to
my
the
God,
database,
yeah.
right?
I mean, I
okay.
could send you
Okay.
in a phone call in 3 minutes,
Okay.
a 3,000 truck fleet just like that.
Okay.
We developed a thing 8 years ago to eliminate the little ticket. It was just a mess for our fleets that we do. So
Okay.
it's already there.
Appreciate that.
There's another comment from online. It's consistent with what we're hearing here, which is reporting each vehicle would add a lot more clerical work. We're not staffed to do that. We're already overburdened with on and off-road and other ARB and AQMD regulations.
And that was a comment from Ron Ness, and this is also a comment from Ron Ness. Ron is busy typing today. He says that lowering the opacity to 20% is too low for those of us that are going to keep older vehicles under the low use exemption. Keep it the same or lower it to 40%. So it's currently 40% for the older vehicles. And I guess I would, yeah, the 55 is for pre-1991. So I guess, Ron, we would like to see which data on the trucks that you have that you think would not pass the 20% limit. How old are those trucks and what opacity do they have? Do you want to talk a little?
Krista, are there any more email comments?
There aren't any more, but if
Okay.
for some reason people that submitted comments, if we missed it due to the email and internet access issues, we will respond to your comment when we're back in the office.
Yeah, okay, for those of you on the webcast or watching YouTube right now, we are back up with the webcast, so hopefully emails, if yours hasn't been answered yet, hopefully it comes in relatively quickly here, but if it doesn't, we'll still get back to you in a short amount of time. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Rene Del Rio with Rainbow Municipal Water District. I guess the question is on the reporting. For our smog vehicles or gas vehicles, you do an online reporting based on the last year or number of the VIN, odd or even. Couldn't they do something like that with the diesels? And then do the reporting as such, odd or even years?
So
it'll
you
split
mean instead of
your
in
fleet
lieu
in
of
half.
annual testing?
Correct.
So that's something we could consider. So, and just to be clear, this testing requirement is for the
For the
fleet
state of
testing
California,
is for,
for
yeah, well, so the requirements that we're talking about here today are for diesel vehicles
Right.
over 14,000 pounds.
Right.
For the fleet testing and reporting,
I
where the
think that
fleets
would've-
test their own vehicles. It doesn't include, it's not for gasoline vehicles.
Right, but that would
Ga-
split the fleets up for the fleets that are larger.
Yeah.
To do an odd or even year, it would alleviate that burden, I would assume.
It's something we could consider, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, how big of a fleet is your guys' fleet, number-wise?
Ours is only 47.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, Michael Velasquez. I'm with Inland Kenworth Packlease, and I just had a question as far as how are you guys getting your OBD information now in your fleet testing, and how do you plan on getting us to submit that to you guys?
So we're doing some OBD pilot scans. We're using a silver scan tool and a canalizer scan tool, depending on which part of ARB is doing the vehicle testing. And right now, we're just collecting that data to get more information on, frequency of fault codes and that kind of stuff. There are no requirements right now for folks to do OBD scans and report them to us. That's something that we would be looking toward as we're developing a heavy-duty I&M program for the future. 2013 and newer model year trucks are OBD equipped. It is much quicker and more convenient for everybody to rely on the OBD system to check that everything on the truck is working correctly. So that's what we would be looking for the future, but there's no requirements for you to do it now.
Right, but
So-
when you are, will it be, how will it be done? Like an annual, or would it be over a few month period if you do go to that?
All very good questions, and we don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lots of things to work out on that one.
So I had a question. Let's see, is Chris Shimoda still here? Yeah, and Bob Shepard, and for other folks who are thinking, wow, that reporting sounds really burdensome, I don't want to do it. And we also heard the question, well, in what cases would you maybe offer less frequent PSIP testing? I wonder if we had a scheme where if you voluntarily reported and reported for a couple years and showed that all your trucks were passing, and we then in exchange offered less frequent, like, oh, then you can take next year off. You don't have to do your testing for a year. Do you think that's something that might be attractive and less burdensome? Sorry to make you get up again.
Okay, not really sure how I'd answer that. This is Bob Shepard. Taking a year off takes your mind off of continuity. So I'd almost think that that would cause more slip. If we knew every other year we were going to do it on a regular basis, perhaps, yes. I don't know really. I'd have to give it some more thought, I guess I'd put it that way. I just really, I do like the thing where you just come up and you just sign an affirmation. You are basically saying that your company is compliant with the smoke testing. If you're not, and enforcement comes back and they do an audit on you, here comes the book. I mean, that is, to me, probably the safest way to do something where you've got a large fleet.
And so would under that idea, you would just report, the name of your fleet, the location where you're headquartered? What kind of information on what trucks you own would you imagine would come along with that?
Yeah, and in fact, you could even report it by a CA number, the motor carrier number, because at this point in time, BIT covers everything over 10,000. Okay, so everything is really kind of under that CA number. I don't know if that helps. But you basically say this fleet is compliant with the smoke testing requirements required for 2016, for 2017, for 2018.
So you're saying you're saying that the part that really feels really burdensome is actually taking a picture of all the little opacity slips and scanning it in and uploading it to a database, but telling us every year, like, this is my fleet and these are the trucks I own and I certify that I'm in compliance with this. That seems more doable?
Yes, that's the suggestion. And, to talk about the scans, a lot of times we'll put multiple, 3, 4, 5 different ones on the same scan. So now we're going to have to scan them individually on each one of those. We cover over a third of the state. And so some of them we do internally, some of them we do with outside vendors, and it's not the same vendor throughout the state, so everybody has a different method. So now you've got all these different types of records. It becomes very, very cumbersome when you're talking about trying to scan them in. Now, that's how we keep them. We do keep them scanned, but you're talking literally 300 scans that you'd have to have from us on an annual basis. And again, think about the fleets that have well over 1,000 vehicles, 2,000, 3,000. So an affirmation, like the doors roar, those kind of things.
Can you talk a bit more about how you store your records now? So you're saying you electronically scan them and then
We
save them?
scan 4 or 5 of these tickets at a time. Again, it varies how you get it. Some of them are little strips. Some of them are not only a strip, but but an invoice that goes with it that has supplemental data, because not every wager meter printout has everything that's required. So you have supplemental information to that. So it does vary, but then each one of them, we'll have them grouped. We may have them filed by 6 different vehicle numbers on one scan. Yeah. I have a coordinator that is doing this, and believe me, it's a constant thing to keep all of our managers. We have 18 different locations, constantly keeping these people to try to keep track of it. And pressing them to get it done You know, we are looking in December to getting some of them done because we spread them out. We're not only operations, but we have rental vehicles. And rental vehicles are spread all over the place, out at customer sites. So we're sending these smoke testers out to those sites. So it gets very, very complicated. Like I said, we got audited, we can manage it, but I have a coordinator. Not everybody in like the construction industry and like that has a separate coordinator to be able to do this, to be able to manage this, along with everything that they're doing with the portable equipment, the off-road regulation, and all the other reporting requirements.
Okay, and I heard correctly that you make sure that each of your trucks get an annual smoke test, but it would be burdensome for you to say like, oh, you always have to turn them all in by April 1st or something like that, like if we set a specific
That is correct,
date.
because now it's mad rush to get them all done by, well, especially April 1, if you're picking a date there, because, I mean, we're transitioning from one year to the next to the calendar year of January, and now to go out and rush and get everything done by April 1, you're asking for the impossible. That's why the calendar year started working for us, to try to manage it on a 365-day, and then you're constantly chasing that 365-day where it's, you know, it's not February 10th, it's now February 8th, it's now February 7th each year. You know, it gets further and further back. The calendar year allows you the flexibility to work. If now all of a sudden you say it's all got to be reported by a certain date, we've gone back in time. And it's contrary to the legislation and the reasons for that legislation to be changed.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more questions for online. Would federal vehicles operating in California be subject to the reporting requirements? I think we had already addressed that one. Federal vehicles operating in California are not subject to the fleet self-inspection requirements, but they would be subject to the roadside inspections. And then we had another question from Jeremy Ostrander with diesel exhaust emissions. Why does this have to be a separate reporting? Why can it not be merged with truckers? Then we don't have to double enter each truck's info. Actually, I believe that
If you have a trucker's login registration, you'd be able to use the same login that you already have.
Yeah.
One comment that I wanted to address while we're waiting for this next question was, I think Chris Shimoda from CTA was asking, well, you know, why are you worried about these emissions? If you look at brake and tire wear, those on a mass basis can be as much as these emissions you're worried about. And I did want to just step back for a minute and emphasize that, you know, the reason that the truck and bus rule required retrofits with diesel particulate filters, the reason that new trucks are required to have diesel particulate filters is, of course, because diesel particulate matter is a toxic air contaminant. So the overall goal of us trying to address this program and lower the opacity limits is just to try to make sure that people have working filters and that that toxic particulate matter isn't getting emitted out there where it's going to harm people. So, and it's you know, more of a concern than brake or tire wear particulate.
We have a comment here from Ron Nuss, staff. We can't take a year off whenever ARB feels we did a good job. There needs to be consistency like DOT does. Reporting is required by the last number on our DOT number, i.e. odd or even numbers are due in odd or even years. Please make it simple. Thanks, Ron. Do we have any more comments or questions from, we're getting a hold moment. We'll give you guys online a little bit more time to get some questions in if you have any. Anyone here in person, feel free to come up as well.
There's going to be another one after this, too.
Rich Miller again, County of Riverside. Can you explain where the data came from with no recording requirements before? How did you come up with your 5% and 20%?
So the 20% number, we have a lot of retrofit verification before they have to put DPFs on. So you have a lot of the older vehicles that were the retrofit installers were making sure they got down to a 10 to 15% opacity before they would even allow the DPF to be installed. Most of them had a 10% limit. And then the 5%, we have a lot of roadside testing, which we discussed actually in the first workshop. I can send you that presentation if you want, where we have a lot of data that we measured DPF-equipped trucks on the roadside doing snap opacity tests.
Okay, is that posted anywhere on your website?
It should be on the exact same webpage that
Okay.
this presentation is on. It's just the first workshop from August and September of 2016.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and we did have a comment from Ron Ness again, that the rule now states reporting by calendar year, not by when the vehicle was tested. Not all trucks are in town to test. We do work out of town sometimes for months at a time. All right, well, and we thank you for your comment, and we'll be double checking the legislation.
Michael Velasquez, Inland Kenworth again. I have a question regarding a sale of a vehicle. So we have currently about 900 units that would be due for testing. If we sell one in that calendar year it's due, will it be required to have it done prior to sale? Or we do not have to do that anymore if that vehicle was sold within that calendar year?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if you did the opacity test within that year and you sell the vehicle, it's no longer in your fleet, so you wouldn't be required to do the testing.
If
for
we
that
haven't
year.
done it yet and we do sell it, is it required before we sell it? Or if we sold it, we no longer have to do it in that calendar year?
So there's no requirements in the current regulation that would require testing on change of ownership. And I think the obligation goes on the fleet, so the requirement would be on the new fleet owner to do it within the calendar year, is my understanding.
I think vehicles below 14,000 pounds fall into the BAR smog check program where you would have to do change of ownership testing. But if it's above 14,000, I don't believe that there is a requirement.
Thank you.
This is a comment from David Rentschler from City of Fairfield, who says, "We keep work orders for each vehicle in our fleet management systems and a folder for all inspections by year. With shrinking staff and government, how are we supposed to scan data in and submit?" So it's another concern about the resource burden of doing reporting. Any other thoughts or suggestions while we're here? So during the first workshops we had a couple folks stand up and say, "Gosh, it sure would be nice if you just linked DMV registration to PSIP compliance, so that just like I get reminded to do my annual or my smog check for my car, I'd get reminded to do this." And so taking that idea back and thinking about it and realizing it would require a statute change to link this up to DMV, we thought about it and thought, oh, well, we could set up a reporting system that would, handle that, would remind you, would help make it more likely that everybody does it. It would help us know who's doing it. And what we're hearing today is, oh my goodness, that would be quite a burden on us. And so I wonder, are there any suggestions from folks here for how we could do something that would make it more likely that everyone's doing this, that everyone remembers to do it, they know about it, without setting something up that's burdensome? I heard, well, you could have us just let you know about our fleet, what trucks we have, and assert that we did it. Any other suggestions?
And I guess, Kim, just to follow up on that, from what I'm hearing, it's the submission of the photo of the opacity strip that's the main burden, not the actual reporting of the vehicle. So. We're getting more clarification.
All right, a little more clarification. Again, as we are going on and on, we add vehicles, we sell vehicles. And one of the things that does concern as well is what happened to us here in Truckers just in January. And that was we had sold 2 vehicles, and they ended up sold down in Mexico, and DMV's records were behind, so there was no sign off on the liability. So when ARB received the information, they said, no, you didn't sell the vehicle. And now we're into a situation where it's the selling the vehicles, the adding the vehicles. To have one more database to report a whole bunch of information in is the difficulty. And it's not just the annual, it's uploading all the information, but then maintaining it. I mean, in the off-road regulation, Kim, you know real well, if you don't do something within 30 days, sell or unsell, you're in violation and there's enforcement. I could see the same thing coming here. And I think that's what the industry is probably a little bit reluctant with or scared about.
Appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Chris, do we have any more over there?
I'll just read this question for you.
Okay.
Okay, is there a different requirement for engines older than 1990? It used to be 55%. Is it 20% now?
Yeah, so if it does not have a DPF, it would be 20%. If it was retrofitted, it would be 5%.
Well, I encourage folks too, as you're thinking about this later, if you come up with suggestions for us, please don't hesitate to reach out. We really are listening and trying to come up with something that will work.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Let me see if I have any spare copies. I just wanted to do the first one. There's nothing in there. Yeah, but I may have had a couple.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to barge in.
Oh, not it.
Stuck at work. I just got on the freeway.
All yours.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.